There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. I am absolutely delighted to give you a rave review of a collection of interlinked short stories that I read recently from a debut writer from Scarborough in Toronto, published in April this year. The collection is called Shut Up You're Pretty by Téa Mutonji. It's a short collection, and many of the stories work as standalone stories, but really, my experience of it was that it was basically like a novel. The protagonist is, I believe, when we first meet her, she's 14, and we follow her through to not much older than that. Maybe she's 18, I can't remember, but her name is Lolly. At the age of 14, she is a new immigrant to Canada from Congo. I believe her father arrived in Canada earlier than the rest of the family, but she arrived with her mother and brother, didn't speak much English, and within the first few hours of landing in the opening story, which is revealingly titled Tits for Cigs, she meets a girl in the neighborhood, Jolly, and Jolly takes her under her wing. I think there's probably a better metaphor for what she takes her under, but she takes her to the 7-Eleven nearby and coaches her that they should both flash their breasts at men going into the 7-Eleven so that they will give them free cigarettes. And that's what the first story is about. Did I mention the title is Tits for Cigs? It was wild. And it was described with so many layers of how Lolly experienced this. She's in a new country, in a new language, and she's meeting her first girlfriend, and this is what happens. So Jolly is black, she's a new Canadian, and she is a beautiful young girl, precociously beautiful, and receives a lot of unwanted and wanted attention from people of all races and genders. The most harrowing parts of the story are, of course, about how fucked up men are, and she gets involved in a series of situations with men where you just go, oh, Lolly, don't do that. But she does it, and it's described with such, again, a tenderness and sensitivity and humor that is like, okay, well, I didn't want you to do that, but now that you've done it, thank you for sharing that experience. And at the same time, this is just a beautiful story about really erotic friendships between her and a series of her girlfriends. And it's just beautiful and screwed up, and beautiful and screwed up in equal measure. The intensity of how she bonds with the young women of her similar age, roommates, neighbors, cousins. I've never read anything like that. Mutonji just takes you all the way inside those kind of connections, as she does with the much less successful or healthy connections that she tries to make with men. And it was just a whirlwind of a read for me. I'm only going to share one quote. So here is how the first story, Tits for Cigs, ends. After all that happens, they go to the nearby park where a lot of the action of various stories occurs. And maybe it's nighttime, because this nudity probably needs to have occurred somewhere secluded or private, so maybe nighttime. The moment ended when Jolly grabbed the cigarettes and yanked me away. We ran as fast as we could, threw ourselves on the empty field behind the housing complex. What did I tell you? Jolly said, lighting her cigarette. We are women! I laughed so hard as she did, feeling the grass shaking. Who are we? Jolly shouted. Women! What do we want? Cigarettes! Jolly took off her shirt as if she had been born to be shirtless, the daylight landing on her chest, the wind, the trees, the entire world cheering, as she got up and ran in circles, her breasts moving like homemade jello. That's just a little taste. There's all kinds of stark things that she endures, and so there's sexual violence and stuff like that. The way Lolly flounders and fumbles and reaches out and embraces You have to try it. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching.